The compressor works.
And so does the gate.
I did that professional thing where you back off really loud. You see that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's professional.
Yeah.
I like that.
Now this is your first podcast, so you have to stay on the mic, or you'll be gated. You'll gate yourself out.
Gotcha. I'm not a singer. What do I know about microphones?
I got 3 musicians in here, so I'm going to be jacking with levels all night.
Yes.
I know how that goes. Welcome to the Van Cave.
Greetings, boys.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Good rehearsal tonight, by the way.
It
Yes,
was.
it was.
The first podcast with the Tim Kreitz Band, the Power Trio.
Yes.
This is all 3 egos fit in this room.
Barely, just barely. It was fine until I got here.
Yeah.
So what has happened, this is an unscheduled event, much like crapping your pants. And what has happened is we had a rehearsal for an upcoming show. Remind me to call the promoter and tell them we're playing it.
Okay,
Lovely.
do that.
And so it wound up 3 old men drinking beer and bitching about music. And I thought, everybody shut up. Let me turn on the cameras and podcast. So then we drug the mixer in here, and it didn't save the settings from the last podcast. But it looks like we're rolling now.
Good.
So,
Everything sounds good, so
yeah.
that's a
we'll
good
see.
sign.
My headset's really hot. You guys good?
I'm
All
good.
right.
I'm pretty hot on YouTube.
So I have actually had people ask for this episode, as well as, I'm going to turn on the background,
Got to get.
as well as people volunteering to travel to come be a part of it. Why does music suck now?
Well,
How long you got? How long is this
okay,
podcast anyway?
Let me go.
we
Let's
try to keep them about an hour at the most. So
yeah.
Don't ask that question then.
I'm sorry. I keep turning
yeah, what's going on here?
some rhythm and blues on Antenna TV.
Mm-hmm.
So here's the thing: when we talk about music, okay, today's music sucks. What are we talking about when we say today's music? Let's clarify that first.
Yeah, that's a good question because
Pretty much anything that has to do with hip hop or pop. I could go on and on here. Today's country. Let's talk about that.
oh god, we could
Good
go
Lord.
off on a big tangent on today's
Yeah.
pop country and how horrible it is. But look, we should probably preface this conversation by saying we're 3 old jaded musicians.
Yes.
You and I have been dragging around West Texas and New Mexico and various places across the United States making music since about 1990 together, something like that.
I think our first actual gig together was in 1991.
Okay, yeah, I think you're right. Yeah,
Yeah.
it was winter 91. We started jamming together in 90. Okay, you're right.
Yep.
Okay, so here's what happens when you get old and you're a musician and you fancy yourself to be a good and talented musician, which most musicians do, whether they're good or not. But what happens is over time, music for me, and I probably never said this out loud, but I found that a lot of music in general has kind of lost its magic for me.
It has.
And that's jadedness. That's what that is. I am jaded. Every time I hear a song, I hear the same 3 chords I've been hearing since Bob Dylan wrote it. You know what I mean? There's nothing new under the sun. I can hear a song for the first time, tell you most of the time what key it's in, what the progressions are, where the movements are. I can tell you if there's a guitar solo or a keyboard solo, what mode that's been played mostly in, and so there's not a lot of music that grabs me these days.
I'm the same way. Yeah.
And I don't know that that's a good thing. I don't know that it's a good thing.
I'll tell you, I always remember something that our old bass player, Roger, once said. His wife decided that she wanted to learn how to play guitar. And she was a huge music lover. Cheryl loved music. And Roger had told her, I'll teach you how to play guitar. But remember this, once you figure out how it's done, it loses some of its magic.
Yes.
And I firmly believe that's true because we have played over the last 30 years every cover song that is available to cover.
Oh, yeah.
And
Yeah,
I hate all of them now.
Yeah, I do too.
Because we played them for so many years. I am sick of it.
Yeah. It's why we don't play great songs that are legitimately great songs that were brilliant in every way. Songs like All Along the Watchtower from Jimi Hendrix, which is one of my favorite artists of all time. And Voodoo Child, we played Voodoo Child, you and me, for 15 or 20 years.
Yeah.
We don't play it anymore, not because it's not a great song, because we're freaking tired of it, man.
Yeah.
And if you're going to be a working musician on all but the upper echelon levels, which you and I have been on the upper echelon a couple of times, but not consistently, depending on what artist we were hired to support.
Mm-hmm.
But your covers are part of your life if you want to make money as a musician.
Sure.
And so there's a danger in playing a song 1,000 times.
Yeah.
You get really good at it, and you really hate it by the
Right.
time you've played it that many times.
That's how you know you've got it down good enough to play in front of a crowd, is when you hate it.
Right. Yeah. An amateur practices until he gets it right. A professional practices until he can't get it wrong.
Get it wrong.
Yeah.
But there's a danger with that, is that you got to plaster on a grin and plow through that shit one more time.
Yeah.
Mustang Sally, one more time.
Oh God.
You can't play it because you're enjoying the song. You're enjoying performing the song. You're doing your thing. That's what they do. Penn and Teller have done the same tricks for decades, and there's somebody in there that's seen it for the first time, and you have to kind of approach it from that way. When I'm grinding through some horrible 1-5-3 piece and watching people dance, that's what's going through my head. Mm-hmm. But I've had this conversation. I got into it with a guy on Facebook. I know that was a really brilliant thing to do,
Mm-hmm.
and his argument was this guy must have been a time traveler. Was that the producers, air quoting producers, are picking out music. And I vehemently disagree. Now that radio is dead, now that record stores are dead, people are buying what they hear. It's a matter of getting it out and getting it heard, and people are hearing it in TV shows, movies, clubs.
Neil Young's worst nightmare has come true. The way that you get your song out there to the masses is by commercializing it some way.
Yeah.
Right.
Using it for marketing purposes. Yeah.
Well, and then
I don't have a problem with that. Let me just say that's Neil's worst nightmare, not mine. I don't have a problem necessarily with that.
Here's the thing: isn't this an artist's dream that we could go back in there in the studio, or in the game room, record something, upload it, it costs us nothing, and in theory, if it's really good, could be seen and enjoyed by millions of people and make us money.
Yeah.
Without a producer, without having to go through all that.
Yeah.
So there's two ways to look at that.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'll tell you the other way I look at it, and talking to a lot of music fans, is there are people who don't want to hear anything written past their sweet spot for music.
Yeah, and how that works is wherever their life started to suck, that's when they don't like the music anymore. So when you get into your late 40s, early 50s, like all of us are, you have those friends that the only shit they want to listen to is the stuff that they listened to when they were happy, when they were truly happy. They want to listen to the stuff they listened to in high school or college before they started making a lot of bad decisions and things started going wrong. And so their time capsule is right. They're constantly going back nostalgically. They're living in the past through that music. Now, nostalgia is not a bad thing, I don't believe. But if you're constantly indulging in it for the purposes of not having to think about the future or where you are now, I think there's danger in that too.
Yeah.
Because I'm with Sir Jackie Stewart when he said, I don't care how old I get or how far past my glory days, all of my Formula One championships, no matter how old I get, I'm always interested in making tomorrow better than today and today better than yesterday. You have to do that every day. And I think that people tend to over nostalgize not only music, but a lot of other things.
Yeah.
Because it takes them back to when they thought they were going to conquer the world, before the world kicked their ass, basically. And maybe I'm being too harsh with that, but I think that there's at least an element of truth in that.
I think there is, because look, I'm gonna kind of snapshot. I was raised on my mom was a Beatle maniac, so I got to hear it all.
My mom too.
And there was also old country, and Hank Williams Jr. played in our house in the country stations. I think the first musician I really got into was Charlie Daniels around The Devil Went Down to Georgia, and then Alabama came out, and I was kind of into that. And then one day I heard Dire Straits, and that made me, it did two things. It made me want to play guitar, and it got me into that raw, and I know you guys hate this word, but that organic sound that Dire Straits has, the old Dire Straits.
But yeah, I think that's not a misplaced word here, though.
Well, so and I did that, and I didn't get tired of it, but it's just I just feel like I stepped to the next thing. We get into the 80s, Dire Straits, I'm still following them, and they're doing, that's during the Money for Nothing days. Mm-hmm. And Van Halen really got in the swing. And then I ran into some guys that listened to AC/DC and some dudes. And then when I started playing guitar, I picked up Guitar World. I'm going, who the hell are these people? And then I heard Satriani on the radio. And then I heard Eric Johnson on the radio. And then I start flipping through going, who the hell is Alex Skolnick? And, then the musician bands phase. Everybody's listening to hair metal. I was into the musician bands. And after that was, high school, life starts kicking me in the ass. Grunge came along, and, dude, I was ready for grunge. And I played in a grunge band.
Yeah, I remember that.
I loved it. I mean, I loved the era. I loved the music. I loved the way it sounded because it was still done in the old studios. It was done at the one they did the documentary about,
right.
Music Studio City. What was it? It'll come back to me.
Yeah, Dave Grohl bought all the stuff out of it.
Yeah, that one. Yeah, the one Dave Grohl did, and all those guys.
The Sound Factory, was that?
No, but you're close.
Man, this is what happens when you get old.
Sound City.
Sound City. And then there was this dead spot. Poof, quiet on my radar. And I'm listening to the radio. I'm working in a car 10 hours a day. I'm listening to the radio, and I'm hearing old stuff and droney new stuff, weird drop tunings, and I just low
tuning, guttural vocals, bad guitar sound.
Bad guitar sound, three chords, not a lead guitar played anywhere because none of them could play lead.
Yeah. So that's kind of a dark era of rock. And Creed is one of the bands that sort of ushered that sound in.
Yeah, I agree.
And it was they got a lot of hype at the time, but hype's a double-edged sword. Mm-hmm. And they actually had more hype than they were able to live up to. But they created a sound that bands, even to this day, unfortunately, are still trying to copy. Mm-hmm. It all comes down to what's your cup of tea. What you grew up on and what I grew up on is drastically different than that. The things that influenced us. I thank God that I wasn't at an age where the band that influenced me to become a musician was Creed or Disturbed or one of those bands. Right. It's just to me, and I know I'm an old jaded musician, but that's just generic disposable crap is all that is.
Well, it is. That era after the hair band, and really it kind of ushered in with grunge, in my opinion. But talent and the drive that young people have to learn to play their instruments started going downhill.
Virtuosity died with the grunge era.
Yes, it did. Yeah. It did. Yeah, nobody wants. And now it went from, I can learn three chords and write some crappy song and get it played on the radio. Then that's good enough. That's all I need to learn. It went from that to now.
They don't even play
instruments. Everything's done on a freaking computer.
It's like that chick that show we were playing a couple months ago where the chick came up and asked me if we could play Beyonce.
Oh,
and I told
her,
I said, I'm sorry, honey, we don't have a laptop with us. We can't play Beyonce.
That night, you got to picture this: 3 old musicians, and we were on. That was just one of those. We didn't expect to be on. Everybody had long, shitty days at work, and it was one of those where, man, you it's like you land the USB drive the first time when you come to work. You don't have to flip it over. We were just dug in, and we played Funk 49. No, Whipping Post. Allman Brothers, Whipping Post. A lot of fun to play in a 3-piece band.
Oh, yeah.
And we melted it, and I remember listening to it. Our dynamics were perfect that night. Normally we're not. You get in there and you have to think to play hard here and soft here, and the way I dig into the strings, something about it, man. There was just an aura of perfection, And we were up there sweating like rock stars, burned it to the ground, nailed it, walked off the stage. My wife was there. I didn't say a word. We just walked up and she said, "Wow.
Yeah.
That's a good night." And then a girl came up and asked us to play a Beyonce song. And Tim looked at her.
I tried not to look at her with eyes of fire. I tried not to laser her with my eyes. And that's part of the problem for me. I think that, a lot of the guys that the older generation from us, you're kind of doing some side work with some of those guys, really good musicians from the baby boomer era of rock and roll.
Right.
And when they're covering songs, they're keeping really old songs alive and doing a great job at it.
Right.
But I can't even imagine how. Well, there's two sides to this coin. Number one, I'm astounded that they can even find a gig anymore, because people their age don't go out anymore. And so apparently there are at least a small group of younger people, Gen Xers and Gen Y, who are interested in listening to it, which that's cool. But I don't.
I don't know. I guess maybe there is. It's the venue that they play in.
Yeah.
And it does bring a lot of older people out.
Yeah.
They don't have to worry about putting up with a bunch of fights and a bunch of kids being loud and obnoxious and stupid.
Good
Everybody's mellow. Everybody gets along. Everybody enjoys themselves. And it is older people that come out to that venue.
Yeah.
And they love it. And they come out every weekend. Mm-hmm. The band plays the same songs every weekend, and they love it.
Yeah. And that's fine. I'm glad that it's still alive. Like, what was the old Huey Lewis song, "The Heart of Rock and Roll is Still Beating"?
Yeah.
Somewhere in some little club out in West Texas, there's a bunch of dudes in their 60s who are still playing Wooly Bully and sitting on the dock of the bay, and they're freaking nailing it, and there are people who still appreciate it. That's a good thing.
Yeah.
I was in a band that played a lot of 80s hair metal, and people came out to have fun. And they did, and they sang and danced, and they got on the stage, and you have to put on the show and all that. But the days of going, 70s, when you talk to old guys who played in the 70s, that was where they wanted to hear what you sounded like.
Right.
And
It was at age late 60s to late 70s was sort of a musical renaissance. You were expected to be a band that produced your own material.
Yeah.
You were supposed to be, that it was more accepted then. In the 80s is where it started to change. Now, Britt and I had our first very successful band together in the right when grunge was ushering itself in.
Right.
And so we did in our cover list a combination of that stuff. We had actually that was a very eclectic band, the Atomics. We did everything from stuff in the 60s, the Doors and the Beatles. In the 70s, we had, back then before doing ZZ Top and Lynyrd Skynyrd covers was passé, we did really well with that. But then we had some of the stuff from what's now pejoratively called the hair metal era, and actually some of the grunge stuff.
Yeah,
that was
we
going
did.
on.
I remember, if I'm not mistaken, it was the day that Nevermind was released. That had Smells Like Teen Spirit.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
John had the cassette, and he brought it to practice that day. Man, we got to learn this song. I'd never heard it in my life. We learned it that night and played it that weekend.
Right.
I think we were one of the very first cover bands, at least in this area, to ever play
Yeah, I think you're
Like
right.
Teen Spirit.
Yeah.
We played STP. We played all that stuff. People loved it.
Yeah, we had a very wide gamut of cover songs. And like you said, the scene in West Texas in particular, or the whole western half of Texas, all the places we were playing from Lubbock and Amarillo up to, back down here, there was a scene. Like there were young.
Yeah.
When they heard a hot band was coming to town, we were as close to rock stars in our 20s as we ever got, just playing those kinds of shows, because there was a scene.
Yeah.
There was a bunch of people who wanted to hear live music. They weren't cynical about it. They weren't picky about it. If it was good music that sounded good and they could have a good time, man, there was just this whole awesome environment. There was a culture around it.
Right.
That's all gone now.
Yeah. This new music, I'm sorry. You can send your letters to P.O. Box, but,
P.O. Box, suck it.
Hip-hop killed music. That's just my personal opinion.
am not a huge hip hop fan. I think some of it has value. Generally, I'm with you that I just don't like it.
I don't like it. It's not. You can't play it live, and
yeah, you don't have to
got-
play it
yeah.
live. You just
I
hit
can't
space
imagine-
bar on the
I
laptop.
can't imagine what their shows are like.
got
mean,
an-
it's,
I
it's
have
a
an
DJ
opinion.
guy with a laptop
I
and
can-
some guy jumping around.
I have
up
an
there.
opinion on that, and I'll tell you where it came from. I was in Lubbock. I was driving by myself. In fact, I had gone up there to. I picked up an amp. I bought a new bass amp up there, and I was driving back, and it was some kind of anniversary of the Carol Burnett show. And so, if you guys don't know what the Carol Burnett show is,
God, yeah, I
because
grew up on
of-
the Carol Burnett
because
show.
of your because of your recent birth, it was a variety show, and they did sketches and dance numbers and all, and they asked Carol Burnett the same questions. They said, "Why does TV suck now?" And Carol Burnett, it was so eloquent the way she went down the list of staff on their production. Makeup people and dancers and directors and sound and blah 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 blah, down to the guy shining the flashlight in the aisles. They had a lot of people and a lot to do, and it was a lot of work. And she said everyone was doing that. There were a lot of shows like that on. Hers was just one of the more successful. Well, now what happened? Cops came out in the 90s. What's a production crew on a Cops episode?
Yeah.
2 cameras and an audio guy and maybe a director.
Yeah.
If he's not being the audio guy.
Right. And so the next thing that happened is somebody else did a Cops clone show. And then it goes down to where we're watching tow truck drivers, meter maids, and nobody's.
Everything's a reality show.
And then we start doing, the scripted reality stuff. And now everyone does it to the point that's all that's on TV. So now if you go try to watch a network, you go look at Discovery Channel. Did you remember how cool Discovery and History and all those?
Yeah. History Channel actually used to be the History Channel.
Right. Now
Yeah.
it's the American Pickers channel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Pawn Stars.
Pawn Stars, yeah.
They were called the Hitler Channel for a while because all it was is the same series of World War II documentaries,
Which was
and
fine
then-
with me. I love that.
Well,
Yeah.
it got old because that's all they had, and they got rid of that president or whoever was making those decisions, and then they got in things like Modern Marvels and some of the other stuff, and they still showed the old things. And they picked up a few, and then we're into Pickers and Pawn Stars and all that
Okay,
stuff.
well,
and the same thing has happened with music, because what does it take for a DJ?
Yeah, nothing. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
virtually effortless. Now, I will say this, that one of my very good friends out in Los Angeles is a DJ. And a good DJ actually has to have quite a bit of talent to be able to do what he does. But that's not, again, there's been a cultural shift. So let's take this to the next step. We have had, with the proliferation of technology, the proliferation of media, the what
Have
the
another-
hell?
Need another
Proliferation. Yeah, I
Get
do
you
need another
get you
beer.
another beer?
Proliferation of social media, all these different types of media. We have an overly entertained populace that keeps itself isolated.
Mm-hmm.
So,
It's just like Rome and the gladiators.
yeah.
Yeah, let's keep the populace entertained
Uh-huh.
so they don't notice how bad we're screwing up the country.
So what happens is you got basically 2 generations of people who Friday night for them is either playing video games or watching someone's Twitch channel. And
We're a bunch of douchebags on
They-
the podcast.
And so the people aren't as connected. Neighbors aren't as connected in neighborhoods. We have more information at our fingertips, more data, more media at our fingertips, but we're more isolated than we've ever been. And I think that's another thing that has caused virtuoso music to fall away. Now, it's still out there. I mean, we still got Warren Haynes. We've still got Vintage Trouble. We still got Power Solo. We still got these bands out there that really, really care about whatever genre of music they've latched onto and chosen to nurture, and they're really good at it. But You don't hear about any of those guys.
Well,
Nobody knows who any of those
the
guys
reason,
are.
and that's
You never hear Government Mule on the radio.
No.
You don't have a record company that's pushing it. They're not out pushing that band like they used to. Can you imagine what Van Halen would have been like if they didn't have a record label that was out,
right?
Pushing their music?
Yeah,
Nobody does that anymore because it costs money.
Mm-hmm.
By the way, Power Solo badged me as a super fan today.
Yeah. Nice,
But,
good job.
Well, here's the great irony. It's been said so many times on this very podcast. It's a big deal in Europe, though. You look at Power Solo is a Danish punk band that I absolutely adore. Those guys they're our age, and they embody the early punk scene, the CBGB's days, and with a sense of humor. They're not as
they're self-deprecating.
Well, there was a super trashy element to punk back then, coming out of the '60s, of course. It made sense and it fit, and there was all that. These guys, there's a weirdness and a humor to it, but it's good punk music. It's somewhere between punk and surf rock. I'll just let you look at them. Power Solo.
It's interesting. I like it because I like it for the same reason I'm not latched onto it like I am certain other quote cult. I'm totally obsessed with like Webb Wilder. Yeah. And I look at Webb Wilder and go, that is a library of brilliant music. I mean, shit, we play half a dozen of his songs, and I'm always thinking to myself, how in the world did it never happen for Webb over the last 30 years? Nobody knows who he is, and he's brilliant.
I'll tell you what I heard him say. I've met Webb and gotten to hang out with him, and he said, "It's because I have a country face and a rock and roll soul."
Yeah, a country face and a rock and roll soul. Yeah,
that's what he says. He just did an album, I'd say just a few years ago, called Mississippi Modern, which is a lot of country that he wrote for other people that they just passed on. And when you hear it, you understand why, because it's an older sound and it just wasn't shitty enough for what they're playing in the hardware stores today.
It was ahead of its time.
Yeah, I got to tell you guys a story. I was in a I think it was Academy or something like that, in the middle of the day. I just swung by to grab ammo for the weekend or something. I was at work, and the music was horrible. I mean, it was pop country. And it was auto-tuned and
auto-tuned pop country rap.
Yeah,
rap.
Oh
yeah,
my God.
and it was just it was awful. It was like, okay, all right. Here's the thing: we've been doing, since I've been laid up sick, and we're not performing. We've done some stuff like our buddy Mike says, "Hey, would you guys do some music for our podcast?" And
so we wrote a theme song.
Yeah, so we just threw it together and we go, what would Mike be like? And we wrote a song. If somebody came in and said, "Hey, I want you guys to like just make fun of country, this would be the song," whatever the hell they were playing. It was terrible. This would be the thing that we wrote. It's bad, and I wanted out of the store. I just wanted the hell out. And there was a young girl, college girl, and she just didn't look like the country type. Just looking at her hair and stuff.
Taking selfies in Academy.
Yeah, and bless her heart, she's a sweet kid, and she's putting stuff in the bag, just kind of robotic. And I said, "How can you listen to that all day?" And she immediately goes, "It's all day. It never stops. Every song is the same. It's like there aren't even commercials. I don't know if it's like satellite or if it's just somebody's CD. We can't do anything. Maybe you can't. You're a customer. If you said something, would you please say something?
Save me from this hell. Please play an Alka-Seltzer commercial. Anything." Yeah. So, since we're going full bore here, I mean, I'll be the first one to step on the feet of pop country. Okay. Another preface. It sucks. But here's another preface. If you look back on every era and every genre of music within that era, the vast majority of it.
Another round, Jets?
Sure, man. I'll take another one of these extra stouts.
I wasn't going to, but this podcast sucks so bad that I better have another.
So
that's what you get for having me on.
Yeah. No, it's not you. So anyway, what I'm driving at is that most of whatever genre of music you're looking at on par or as a whole in whatever era sucks. 75% of it's gonna suck. You can go back to the bubblegum era of the 70s. 80% of it sucked. You can go back to
Thank you, sir.
the hair metal, quote unquote hair metal era. That's as I said before, a pejorative term. But 80% of it sucked. It's all, I look back on that now and I go, oh my God, it was all horrible. And that's another thing that gets me about growing up in that era is that there are people to this day who still think that's some of the most brilliant music ever written.
Sure.
And the vast majority of it is crap. So that's where we are
it's
with
their music. It's the music that they went to high school with.
It's the music when they were happy.
Right.
Yeah, it reminds them of that one time in their life back 30 years ago when they were happy.
Right. And
it's been misery ever since then. So that's where pop country is that it is 80+% crap, and it will be looked back on with the same sort of retrospect that I believe the hair metal era is being looked back on.
I graduated high school in 1983 or 84. One or the other. That's how old I am. I can't remember what year I graduated high school in. But I remember Quiet Riot came to Ector County Coliseum. Now, I graduated from Monahans, Mudville. And I absolutely hated it. Everybody went to the Quiet Riot concert, and they all came back with their Quiet Riot T-shirts on, and I was hip deep in Leonard Skinner and Rush in those days, and I absolutely hated it. I never liked that music. I never liked the hair band era, and it should have been my music. It should have been the era that I grew up in.
It should have been my music too, and
I hated it.
Yeah, I delved into it for a few years before you and I had the Atomics. I was in a band called Street Child.
Yeah, I remember them.
Everybody remembers
I love
Street
the
Child.
pictures.
I still got a T-shirt.
Dude, Street Child freaking ruled West Texas. For a couple of years, we had that band. But it was, dude, I'm a cowboy on a steel horse I ride, and Don't Treat Me Bad, and I mean, it was all of that hair metal of the era as covers. And then we had an album that never got finished that was 9 originals that sounded just like all the covers we were playing.
Yeah.
Okay, now that was what it was. I mean, I look back fondly on that era. It was fun. It was fun. I was learning as a musician. I was in my late teens and learning as a guitar player and kind of chewing my teeth on different styles, and this hair metal style was something I was kind of into. But something happened right about the time I turned 19, 20. Well, I'll tell you exactly what happened to me. I discovered Eric Johnson.
Yeah.
And that fundamentally shattered my concepts of music. I had heard of Eric Johnson before. I had seen one of his early Austin City Limits performances from the mid-'80s. So I knew who he was and I knew he was cool. But when Avia Musicom came out, a lot of different things happened for me. One was I got the album and I became absolutely enthralled with it. It shattered all my concepts of everything to do with music, with guitar music in particular. Sound, sonically, arrangements, concept, subject matter, everything. And it made me realize that, hey, you know what? Most of the stuff I'm playing in this band is crap. It's crap. I need to push my limits as a musician. I know I won't ever get to where Eric Johnson is as an artist, but I can damn sure fall somewhere in the middle between there and where I am now.
I'm going to say something very much in favor of the hair metal, though. And this happened a few nights ago, a few months ago. Just sitting around practicing, and I thought, I wonder what's the oldest song that I've played in a band that I could remember. And I was going through YouTube trying to remember, shit I played in the 90s and all. One of the songs I pulled up was Poison, Talk Dirty to Me, right?
Oh, God.
I know. Everybody says that. We all roll our eyes. Anyway, and I rolled through it, and I remembered it. And then I thought, all right, let's see what kind of crap fest the comment section is. And you got to scroll to find a bad comment because young people are saying, can you imagine our music being like this today? Because it was happy. These guys, it was about partying,
girls,
sex, drugs, rock and roll.
Sex, drugs, rock and roll, good times, excess. Yeah. It was about all the stuff that the Gen. Now, I will say this: I think you're right. Gen Y and Gen Z have both been taught that all of that stuff is inherently and empirically bad, and so their music is about extremes. Everything, but it's about extreme sadness. You got the emo, you got the goth, you've got the real guttural metal stuff, and then you've got rap, which is all about, the women are all whores, and they're talking about all the dudes they sleep with. The dudes are all about money, and you know what I mean.
Cop hating and bitches. And
the themes are all dark.
Yes.
All the themes in modern music, from rap music to modern heavy metal music to whatever alternative turned into that they're now listening to now that has its roots in alternative. All the themes are dark, and so they can look back on a song like Nothing But a Good Time or Talk Dirty to Me or something and go, this is fun.
Right.
Hey, guess what? Music can be fun.
Yeah.
And so there is value in that era historically from that perspective, I think, and other perspectives as well.
And there was a time, one of the bands, the 80s band, I was in Loudfinger for a few years, and we did, I can't remember who wrote Bad Girlfriend. And it's kind of, I don't know the style. The kind of drony.
It's low tuned.
Yeah, and it was a consortium of I don't know. Everybody knows what I'm talking about.
It's real bro voice.
Yeah, and it was kind of a it was that generic sound and
where you just sing like this.
Yeah.
Creed, right?
Yeah.
That's exactly what Creed.
It had that
like.
kind of a sound, and and my thing, and I'm a bassist and I'm a snob. That's outside of the tonal range of that instrument. So everything that I've done to get my tone goes to crap when there's just zero tension on the strings and they're just woof, there's just, it loses it. Anyway, in the same set list one night was Wildflower.
The Cult.
The Cult, thank you. And
great band from the 80s.
Great band, yeah. And I put the lyrics.
They're in the good 20%, man. That was a good band.
Yeah.
And we were talking about my wife and I had this conversation, and I put them together. And Bad Girlfriend is pretty pornographic. It's very.
He's talking about a girl who's essentially a whore slut.
Yeah, daddy's girl and just very vivid,
again,
sexual acts and stuff like that.
The same dark themes.
And this isn't a morality thing. I have no problem.
No,
I love Californication. I love dirty stuff. But there was just something cool about when I want to stage in a club and you play Wildflower. It's there's people on there on dates, people wanting to dance. It was a different. It's not
a different
so
vibe.
Dark. It's
that's
just
a
that's
an ass
vibe.
Shaker as well. So, that's one of those songs that's just an ass shaker. It had kind of an interesting theme to it. It had an optimistic view of the situation that they were singing about, and it's an ass shaker. Where was I going with this? I hate it when I lose my train of thought during a freaking podcast.
Solo.
No. You guys just stay on E. Just stay on E. No.
If you forget where you're at, always jump to the bridge.
Yeah.
But if you're bass and you screw up, you do the exact same thing again and then jump back in the groove, and people will be like, yeah, that dude gets it.
Yeah. So I just I think that part of what modern music is struggling with is that it's all been done before. I'm waiting to hear. Maybe we can do it and nobody will ever know, and we'll all go to our graves, and we'll be like William Blake, where, 150 years after we're all dead, someone will discover the music that we did and go, holy crap.
Yeah.
This is really good. And then, become posthumously famous.
Well,
but what I'm driving at is that modern music has a lot of things to overcome, and not all of them are just the fact that none of it's original. It's all been done. It's all contrived. It's all programmed. It's all predictable. The millennial whoop, all of these little themes and motifs that you hear in every song. It has to overcome all that, and then it has to overcome the current state of where we are in modern culture in the West. And then after that, somebody's got to come along that, like I was saying before, is legitimately doing something no one has ever done before, pushing a new boundary, opening a new door, inventing something in music.
I don't even think it. I'm going to give you my 2-beer opinion.
Okay.
The reason we have EDM is the same reason we had Led Zeppelin. Chicks.
Okay. Okay.
No, listen.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Let me work this out, because when the Beatles came in, Beatles are good. I'm a Beatles guy. I was raised on it. My son, I'm gonna have him in here just to talk about the Beatles, and he'll blow your mind what that kid knows. What's your iconic, as an American, what's our iconic image of the Beatles? It's getting off the airplane with women trying to crawl through cyclone fence to get to them.
Mm-hmm.
It was women. What were the Stones about? It brought the chicks. Zeppelin. The bands, the clubs, 60s, 70s, 80s. When you see an 80s band, what is in it? It's chicks in tight pants with fluffy hair.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what's happened through the social media and what you're saying, if you have a club and you want to sell anything, you got to get chicks in there. And what are chicks after right now is EDM and things of that nature. Because, and now I'm going to take this all to a more positive angle, there is mind-blowing new music out there that the masses aren't hungry for.
But
and that's what I want to get to now, because I want to offer people what we're listening to. And this isn't just deep musician shit. Okay, some of it is. Okay, probably all of it is. But still, it's good stuff. First band I'm going to throw out there is Wolfpack. You guys see me wear the shirt on the podcast, VULF. It's VULF-PECK is the name of the band. A bunch of young guys, bassist named Joe Dart, who is phenomenal. And it is sort of a James Gang, kind of like a modern, they're a little more jazz, more like a modern Blood, Sweat, and Tears, James Gang, somewhere in there. It's a jazz to rock. But these kids, every kid in there is younger than the instruments they're playing, and they're mind-blowing.
Yeah.
Right off the top of my head, check out Deantown. There's also a group of those guys in the Fearless Flyers. Check those guys out. It's amazing. So
here's my, I'm not going to call it a problem, but here's my issue with bands like Wolfpack, and there are other ones like that. You have a bunch of virtuoso musicians. The good part of that is there are young people who are interested in becoming virtuoso musicians. That's a very good thing. The problem that I found with Wolfpack, and maybe I just need to dig in a little deeper, is that they don't have a song.
Well, they don't. They're kind of a project band.
It has to be more than acrobat. It has to be more than gymnastics on the fretboard.
But they're doing guest features, which is kind of a thing. They'll feature a pop singer. They'll bring someone in.
That's a good idea.
And they're doing that.
That's a way to bridge that gap. Yeah. So okay. Throw out who's
somebody new you're listening to.
Somebody new you're listening to or you like. He doesn't listen to anything new.
I don't. I have so much trouble listening to anything new. There's something out there now that I'm really listening to that I really like, but it's just a cover band, and that's the Blues Beatles.
Oh yeah,
love those guys, but it's just Beatles music.
They're just doing it their way.
They're just doing it their way, and I love it.
Nothing wrong with that.
Postmodern the last of the rock bands, Foo Fighters. I still listen to the Foo Fighters a lot.
Yeah.
I like the Foo Fighters.
I am the couple of things we got out of the grunge era that have made music better, and Nirvana is one of them because we got Dave Grohl.
Right.
And also we got Chris Cornell out of it. So
Right.
Soundgarden
Yeah.
and Chris Cornell
Yeah,
and all the
Soundgarden-
stuff he did before he unfortunately passed.
Yeah, of all the grunge stuff, Soundgarden was always my favorite.
Sound-
They were the
yeah.
best. That was the best musicians.
was.
I'll
of
tell
all
you.
of that.
I'll tell you, a
Right.
fun band to follow at this moment in time is Weezer.
Yeah, but they're doing a lot of
Cover stuff. They're-
weird
But
stuff.
I understand, and I'm liking it.
They do a
I'm-
very good job of the
they're,
cover
they're
stuff. that
doing
they're
it,
You know,
but
when I
you gotta watch their videos too. They're having fun. They're not a new band. They're not playing new music. Doesn't fit my own genre. But shooting off of what you said, they just did a video of Aha's Take on Me that I talked about.
Mhm.
That is brilliant. So if you haven't seen that, go see it. It just came out a few weeks ago. But new band. Who you
Yeah,
got?
I'm glad that Weezer's still there. They're one of my favorite bands to emerge from their era. But when I look at what they've done in recent years compared, like they did a freaking cover of Africa that was so esoteric. I'm just like,
Did
these
you
are-
see the video?
These are the guys who wrote "Say It Ain't So."
Okay,
yeah,
right.
I saw the
yeah,
video.
come on, the video made it though.
Well, it's funny the way they did the video. So I'm
Yeah.
glad that they're taking this self-deprecating route and not taking it too seriously. They're like, yeah, we're doing a cover of Africa. We're gonna make the video funny because it's kind of funny that we're the band who wrote "Say It Ain't So," but now we're doing a cover of Africa.
Right.
So that is what it is. I don't have a problem with what Weezer's doing, but I just think back to they've got a handful of songs that really, really moved me. Songs that were fun, songs that were innovative at the time, is in the early and mid '90s when they came out. But there was always this deep thing happening with Weezer on an emotional level that they could conceptualize into song that I don't think they ever got enough credit for. And maybe it's the fact that they didn't get enough credit for it that they kind of abandoned it and just said, screw it, let's just start nostalgizing everything.
Well, and I think there's also a point in a band, and we're there. I mean, if you guys don't realize it happened to us over the last couple of rehearsals. We're in a weird spot,
Yep.
and our with me as a bassist, the live days are very numbered, and let's just do what we want to do.
Yeah. That's
Something
where we
good
are.
will come out, and it could come out of misfortune like us. Or it could come out of great fortune where you don't need it. You're not gonna. Do these guys know they can't write anything that's gonna chart?
Yeah.
And it's just gonna kind of fall into the haze because think about it. You look at the hits on the videos they're doing now, and the chatter and everything, the shows that they're going on, and the stuff that they're doing, the concerts that they're just packing.
Yeah.
That was a good decision.
Maybe in a way, yeah. I mean, yeah. As a business, they made a good business decision. That's true.
I mean, dude, come on. If we did a just a cheesy, shitty cover in a video that got 1 billion views and made some money, and think about it.
Yeah.
But
well, I'm being hypocritical in a certain sense, but that's part of being a musician. We sort of embrace our hypocrisy and our duality. You know. No, don't get me wrong, man. I love Weezer. I always will. I'm totally on board with what they're doing, but I look back on what I considered to be their peak and what they're doing now artistically. It pales in comparison to me.
Okay, I do have something to clear up. I'm a little upset with this. Is the last dark thing I'm going to talk about, and this is very tough. And I want everybody to look carefully. By the way, we're multicam.
Hi and
Yeah. So this camera right here, watch. This is Weezer. This is Webb Wilder. Okay? And if you don't believe Webb Wilder got this first, watch the circus song.
Human Cannonball.
Watch Human Cannonball. Look up the video from like 1988.
Yeah, he was doing that.
And tell me the bassist is not a time traveler because that dude hipsters exactly like the hipsters I saw in Marfa.
He was a hipster before there were hipsters.
So,
yeah.
Weezer, Webb Wilder.
Yeah.
So, what's your newest band? Who are you on right now?
Okay, well, I don't know that necessarily there's anything completely new going on with me, but I've been digging a little bit into recent stuff that I got into and then kind of moved away from. And Government Mule is one of them.
Yeah.
That's why I mentioned them earlier. I'm looking for right now isn't necessarily new bands. Though I will say new bands, like I'm totally into Vintage Trouble right now.
Got to be into Vintage Trouble.
Dude, I love Vintage Trouble. I mentioned them earlier. So there is some new stuff going on. I'm totally into. I'll tell you that artists that are maybe a few years younger than us that are not well known that I really like. Lance Lopez is a guy that I've been listening to for I don't know close to 15 years now. He and I met on remember MySpace.
Oh yeah.
That's where we got introduced to each other, and we're acquaintances at best. We're not buddies or friends or anything like that. Though I would call him a friend. I'm just saying that I'm listening to people that are not well known at all. Like you would have no idea if I named off some of the bands that I've been listening to. I've been listening to a band called Too Slim and the Tail Draggers. It's another guy I met when we played Blues Fest a couple of years back. I met the guitar player from Too Slim and the Tail Draggers, and we became Facebook friends, and I started digging into his music. He's got a lot of good music. So I'm really into stuff that it's beyond independent. That's where I am. And what I'm looking for is I'm looking for the song. I'm looking for a piece of the song. Mm-hmm. Do you remember a long time ago, you and I have had this conversation, I think, before. VH1 did I don't know if it was a behind the music or something on the Black Crowes.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
I saw that.
And Chris Robinson said, we feel like there's this giant cloud-like thing above all of us, and it's the song. It's the perfect song, and it's floating right above us. And if you're real lucky, if you jump high enough, you can grab a piece of it and get a piece of the song and bring it back down with you. So what I'm looking for these days is I'm looking for artists that can give me a piece of the song. And I don't care how well known they are, how terrible they behave. I don't care.
Right.
If they can give me a piece of the song, if they can transmit some soul. Soul is another thing that's missing from music right now. That's probably the biggest thing that's missing from music right now is it doesn't have a soul.
Right. But it's out. All that's my point is all of that is there.
It's there.
Not selling.
Right. It's there, and
you
have
said
to
Vintage
search
Trouble.
for it. You got to search hard for it.
You said soul, man. Vintage Trouble.
Oh yeah.
Those guys are just soaked in soul. Mm-hmm. There is so much going on with that band. It's a 3-piece band from L.A.
Although the guitar player is from the Nordic runes.
Dude,
Anyway, go ahead.
Who isn't? Because again, if I like it, it's popular in Europe, and you can't find it here. But look up a song called "Hand Me Down Blues."
Great song.
Nancy Lee. Nobody told
me. That's a good
all
one.
Those songs, they're unbelievable. I swear the singer can channel James Brown. Another band I want to bring up, I'm bringing it up because a lot of people like them. There are things I do like about them and things I don't like, and that's Greta Van Fleet. Those guys are sweeping the world with the vintage kind of Led Zeppelin clone. The singer has I'm just not hot on his vocals, on his tone, but they're doing some stuff. They're.
It's interesting how we're a bit divergent in some of this. I'll tell you right now that Greta Van Fleet.
I have nothing to add.
Yeah.
I've heard of them, but I cannot say I've ever heard any of their music.
A lot of vintage fans are really into them. They kind of have they have very vintage instrument tones. Mm-hmm. They kind of got the Zeppelin screech.
It's not the kind of Zeppelin. They are flat out ripping Zeppelin.
Think so?
Oh, dude. Yeah, it's not even funny. And I don't have a problem with that. Yeah. But this is not the first time this has happened. I think it's just happening at the right place in the right time. Greta Van Fleet right now is completely ripping Led Zeppelin's sound at a time when there is a musical boots void. There,
Okay, I'm with you on that.
So this is not the first time this has happened. You remember Kingdom Come?
Yep.
Okay.
I was going to say that.
In the 80s,
That guy sounded exactly like Robert
in
Plant.
the late 80s, there was a handful of bands that managed to get major recording deals and promotional deals who were basically ripping the Led Zeppelin sound with an 80s production, with that overproduced 80s sound. And Kingdom Come was one of them. In fact, Gary Moore wrote a song about it called Lead Clones. He was so sick of hearing it.
Yeah.
So if you want to, I guess what I'm trying to say is, if you want to take the easy route, completely cop the sound of one of the biggest bands ever. The next thing will be The Who. There will be some group of young Muppet heads who comes out and they completely rip The Who's sound. And they'll be the next big thing, just like Greta Van Fleet. Greta Van Fleet is a good band. They sound good. There's nothing wrong with them aesthetically as a band, except for the fact that they are blatantly... They're basically a Led Zeppelin tribute band, except they write their own songs that sound exactly like Led Zeppelin songs. Yeah.
So my wife got me into Volbeat, speaking of Danish bands.
Yeah, you lose me on Volbeat, man.
I'm a fan. I like them.
Never heard their music. Heard of them?
Nope. Yeah. They
Didn't you go all the way to Las Vegas just to see Volbeat one time? You and Fabula?
Yeah, we went. Well, they were coming a lot closer. It's just the stars lined up. Went with my drummer buddy Raul Aguilar. He and I've been in a bunch of bands together. I get to tell a story about Raul, by the way. I'm going to tell a story on you. We're gonna talk some shit about Tim Kreitz here because we got time. They're kind of. They have sort of a sound like Metallica around the Load years, but the guy, he played in the Danish, some kind of metal band, and he was steeped in old Johnny Cash and stuff in the 60s. So it's a weird sound, but it has a cool grind. So I got to tell a story real quick. If you were there, it was a slow night at a club, playing a local club, and Britt got sick and couldn't play that night.
I remember this.
Yeah, he wound up in the hospital.
Terribly sick.
He was in the emergency room.
Yep. So Britt was sick, and I've played in a lot of bands, and I'm a backliner, kind of fade back, and it's, I don't want to say do as you're told, but you're not. You just kind of fade in and absorb things. Tim is kind of a note for note perfectionist, and he hears mistakes that I don't hear. And there's a zone. Britt is surgical as a drummer.
Rock solid.
Just rock solid.
Thank
you.
Thank you.
I had to get into the mode of doing everything the same way. And it's not like I'm trying to bitch that there's not room to fly. It was just a different thing. Plus, this was my first 3-piece, which is... you're humping a mighty ruck when you're a bassist in a 3-piece.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Had a blast and got everything down. Well, no other bands could take the gig that night, and so we called up Raul. And I can link some videos with Raul. Raul's a drum liner. He was a drum liner in college, so he's very mathematical. He's really, really solid in jazz and stuff like that. Fantastic guy.
Great drummer.
Yeah.
Super nice guy.
Very loose and knew about 5 of the songs that we played.
But
he
knows how to jam.
He knows how to jam. And Tim got up there, was so tight and worried because we didn't have that note for note. Like, we don't even look at each other half the time.
Right.
And we got in there, got a couple of beers in, and loosened up with Raul and just roared. And I heard notes pour out of your amp that night. That it was a fantastic night.
So
it was cool.
I'll tell you, I learned a lot about myself that night. That had been so long. I have missed in 30 years 1 gig due to the flu.
I remember.
You have missed 2 in 30 years due to the flu.
Yep.
And so Britt and I, as a unit, over the past 30 years, have not had to deal with improvisation and loose arrangements and sort of jazz, improvisational stuff. Dude, I had a ball that night.
That was fun.
Once I figured out that Raul got it, like he got it. Hey, man, we're just gonna make this work. man, we had a ball that night. Now, don't get me wrong, I was glad to have you back, but I learned a lot about myself. I learned that, number one, I haven't been jamming enough.
Yeah.
And also, we are so surgical in how we put together sets and how we put together songs and originals and covers that it would be nice to have this sort of loose lattice work that we could climb up once in a while where we're all just
I've never been
jamming.
I've never been in a band
improving, that didn't do it until you got with us, because me and Britt historically don't do that.
No.
Yeah, and I've never been in a band that performed this much.
Yeah.
And I mean, I had to change my gear because I was tired of lugging crap around and all that. But I was jamming with Raul, and this kind of drummer that Raul is. I've got to get him in here too. We were playing a boring song in a band we were in together, and honestly, I was so bored. I was noodling the bass line. I mean, I wasn't screwing it up, but I was experimenting where I should be in my practice time, and I was just sticking around. And I had an idea, and I was noodling, and I came up with this note that really needed a kick drum on it or something. And Raul was back there playing, and I get to that spot, and he puts down the kick drum, and I go through the riff again, and boom, he puts it down, and he looks over at me like, there you go.
Yeah,
that's what you need.
He does this thing. Raul does this thing where when he wants to jam and just improvise, you'll do something and he'll look at you and he'll get a smile on his face like, dude, I liked that. And he'll kind of point at you with a stick when he gets, let's do that.
Yeah.
And he'll break a song down. I mean, you've heard, because anytime we have a Tim Kreitz Band where he can get to and he comes, we always ask him to sit in for 3 or 4 songs just to have fun doing that. And so that, just being able to jam with him from time to time, and doing the blues fests where I'm jamming with those guys who all they do is jam. Hey, what are we doing? All right, we're going to do this movement and this bridge in this key. Holy shit. Okay, let's do this. You better know what you're doing, man. You want to jam with those dudes. But I've always have a really good time doing that. And so, yeah, that's that's a really good reason to have Raul on, is just to talk about that.
Another thing that's brought me to the age that the information age has brought us, and my wife can't stand it. She wants to hear the studio version, like the way she's always heard it.
Yeah.
To the degree that I had a scratch track, came home with a scratch track, which was made on a crappy laptop thing. It was horrible. It was just so all the musicians knew their parts.
Mm-hmm.
Like the drummer didn't even show up that day. It was all electronic. And I gave it to her on a CD, and I'm like, hey, listen to this. Tell me what you think about it. And so we go to a studio, and we recorded it. And it was fantastic. It was a great recording of a song. In fact, it was a song that I wrote. Came out just great. I was so excited. Brought it home, and Nicole listened to it, and she goes, I like the original better. And I said, it doesn't get any more original than this. like this song came from the studio to your ear. No, the other one. That's not a song. But anyway, one thing we're getting is we get to hear that noodly experimental thing in all these live performances that we see on things like YouTube that we didn't have before. Mm-hmm. They're just fantastic. Mm-hmm. And that's something else the age has brought us.
So so good. So we're moving to a positive thing, because we were just circling the drain of negativity for the first half of this.
That's why I'm taking it out, because I've gone so far as a listener, as a musician. Mm-hmm. And when I was I had 28 radiation treatments when I was in Houston, and I had to go twice a day. And there was a radio tech. His name was Mustafa, and that guy had lived all over the world, and he had heard all kinds of music, and they were listening to something in there, and I don't remember what it was, but I said. And I'd had some conversations. I'm like, you like this music? And he's like, man, I'm so tired of this crap. It's what these kids are playing here. Mustafa's our age, And I said, I'll tell you what, brother, I'll bring you something every day. 28 treatments. I brought 28 different songs that dude had never heard before. And it was just mind-blowing to him. And Bella Fleck and the Flecktones. There's another one. Go listen to those
love
guys.
Bella
They're
Fleck.
still out doing stuff.
Now here's why I like Bella Fleck, because Bella Fleck and his whole entourage of musicians that he carries around with him, they are very gymnastic musicians, but they get melody, they get composition, they get. That's why that's so great. That's another reason why, if we want to take a complete musical turn and talk about that kind of stuff, that's why I've always loved Chick Corea.
Yeah.
If you ever really, this is one of my favorite live music performances I'm about to mention, and it has no guitar player in it. It has Dave Weckl on drums, Chick Corea on keyboards, and John Patitucci on bass. And I bought it. I bought it off of Amazon. It's an old 1987 recording off of some public television station up in the Northeast. It's called the Workshop, and it's Chick Corea Electric Band live at the Workshop, and that is absolutely one of those. It's esoteric. It's complicated arrangements. But at the same time, it's got that emotional content. It's got correct composition.
Yeah.
And Bella Fleck is one of those guys who does that as well. It's a shame that not more people know who Bella Fleck and the Flecktones are.
Just go check them out. Again, what are they, Danish? Again, are we back to?
Why do we always end up?
I forget what Bella Fleck is. They're. I'm on it. Like I said, I'm on a series. Power Solo came to the U.S. for South by Southwest. Perfect fit for South by Southwest. They were supposed to play in Lubbock. I had already taken the day off to go, and it got canceled. I don't know why,
shame.
but they are. If you want to watch, if you want to get a good feel of Power Solo, we can't play these songs in with the videos because we run into copyright issues and all. So, look up, just Google, go to YouTube and type Power Solo TV, and there's a long live concert of them playing in a stage that looks like a television. You really have to experience them live. Their videos are all funny and weird. And what's crazy is Kim, the lead singer, you would think this guy is a strung out heroin addict, just super weirdo, leather-faced guy. He's actually younger than me and doesn't look it. And when you see him in the interviews, he's this little old man in a cardigan sweater sipping tea. Very, very articulate. But when he's on the stage, I'm so sorry, I drew a blank. I was watching in Power Solo TV. They do a long, drawn-out solo, and they pass a whiskey bottle around.
Oh, I've seen that.
And I noticed there's like an 1/8 inch of whiskey out of the bottle. And those guys, it's a punk band, and those guys are surgically tight through everything they do, which to hear a live punk show that seems that rambunctious, that is so tight, is really rare. So that's it. I'm just on a Power Solo kick. I'll be rambling on about another.
I know that's where
later.
you are right now. But I will say this: we obviously all have very eclectic tastes in music, and I think that's important as musicians. But I think that the average person could take. If you can take anything worthwhile from these mindless ramblings we're doing right now, it's that you should widen your musical palette. I'll listen to Chick Corea, I'll listen to Stoney LaRue, and I'll listen to Power Solo, and I love all of it. Good music is good music, and it defies genre when it's really good. So
I agree.
Yeah. So
I'm even as a young man, like I said, in high school, when everybody was listening to hair music, I was listening still in my Leonard Skinner. I was going through a Southern rock thing there. In my freshman and sophomore years in high school, it was all Rush. I mean, there was no other band on the planet but Rush.
Me too.
And then I started getting into the Outlaws and Leonard Skinner and
you had
38 Special.
You had a Firefall T-shirt.
I damn sure did. I had a picture taken when I was in 8th grade for band and in a Firefall T-shirt, I still love Firefall.
Yeah. And Atlanta Rhythm Section, all those bands like that.
I've been listening, YouTubing just because I'm in sales. I'm on the road all the time. So if I'm going on a long drive or something, I've been YouTubing Pure Prairie League. I've just been going through all their albums and just playing them all. I love that stuff. It's awesome.
Yeah.
You know, Vince Gill that's where Vince Gill got his
exactly.
start.
Yeah.
In the 80s.
And it's
later.
sad that genre in that era is well, as an era it's sort of forgotten. It's like a forgotten era. You were talking about Alabama.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there was a whole early to mid 80s era of country music that was good that's forgotten.
Yeah.
And it goes that way in Southern rock too, because at the time when those bands were at their height, Southern rock was falling out of favor.
Mm-hmm.
And so a lot of those bands like Pure Prairie League and Firefall, and there were a lot of them that maybe didn't get the height of recognition they deserved.
Well, you remember those guys, I think the last one was Asleep at the Wheel.
And love Asleep at the Wheel.
No, I'm sorry. It was Asleep at the Wheel. And the last one I recall was the Georgia Satellites. They had problems because they were charting on rock and country with the same songs.
Yeah. Well, and that was the beginning of crossover music, too. If you'll remember, there were several bands. There was also a band called the Kentucky, what were they called?
Kentucky
Headhunters.
The Kentucky Headhunters. They crossed over, too, rock and country, right about that time. And who came in on their heels to firm up the fact that you could go big on crossing over? Freaking Shania Twain.
Yep.
Yeah, that's true.
And all of the people in that era. So I don't have a problem with crossover. You know, like I said,
good music is good music.
Right. So, and in fact, a lot of ways, crossover music has advantages because it does help people widen their musical palette. But yeah, I remember that era very, very well.
Yeah.
You know, that I can remember thinking to myself, that's something that's really never happened before.
Another thing that really, I think that what shaped us was there were times that you heard a song on the radio that you were immediately blown away by. And Cliffs of Dover was that one for me.
Okay.
It just immediately took me, Eric Johnson. And then you have the songs that just sort of grow. And if you're not into anything popular, if you're resorting to watching Three Dickheads on a podcast and Googling the bands, you
Speak
say,
for yourself.
yeah, you got to keep you if it doesn't immediately grab you, there's no chance for it to grow on you because you're not going to go back and listen to it.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's kind of my thing. I found out I started just taking not that I unlawfully download music from YouTube or anything, but downloading the MP3s, putting them in my phone or something, and listening to them in the car or on the motorcycle or when I'm mowing the lawn or whatever. And I just absorbed it.
Yeah.
Just the more and more I got into it was Afro Skull was one of those bands.
Oh, Afro Skull, yeah.
When I first heard Afro Skull, I was like, it's cool, and I downloaded they have everything. I joke about them. Everything they do sounds like a 70s cop movie car chase.
Yeah.
But they're amazing, and if you're not a musician, you may not hook on them. I don't know. But I put on an Afro Skull live show those guys did in New York. Fantastic sound. And it's like 2 hours long, just it's a club gig. And listen to it for like 4 days on a motorcycle trip alone. And when I got out, I was just, this is amazing stuff. You know, it did. But that's, unfortunately, if you're going to hear a song more than once that you don't really like, you just can't. That doesn't happen anymore like we did on the radio, in the radio days.
Well, I learned a lot by having this conversation tonight. Actually, the good thing, a good rehearsal that went, and then we came in here and did a podcast talking about music. So now I'm all fired up about music. So that's good. That's something that, you know, I've kind of, I've been sort of consumed with other things, and I'm really looking forward to having new musical experiences, to sort of breaching and crossing new horizons. So,
well,
yeah,
I'm going to close out on kind of a podcast milestone, and you were the first one to say it, and 3 or 4 people have said it since. You watched an episode that's coming up soon on the Guadalupe Mountains, and I was asking your opinion. I had sound problems and issues with it. I'm like, do I need to reshoot this or what? And Tim listened to it. Yeah, you got floor noise, blah, blah, blah. But it made me want to go to the Guads again.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping, and other people have told me this, that you're gonna want to look up these bands, listen to some music, rediscover some things. You're gonna want to go hiking when you hear the next video, or go sailing, or ride a motorcycle, or go hipster in Marfa like I did last weekend. It just makes you want to do things. That's what it's about. So cool, gentlemen. I appreciate it. I saved my last little swig of beer.
Good times, boys.
Cheers.
It was a hoot.
All right. See you guys next time. Cheers.
Yeah.